We spoke a little earlier in the day to Glenn Williams about his major opposition, whom I guess he, along with everybody else, is picking as Paul Pavletic. It's pretty hard to beat Superman.
Yeah, Paul rides real good, as you know, and he has for a long time. He's got a lot of experience, and no doubt we'll have another couple of ding-dongs today.
Do you think you gain any advantage, or is it a disadvantage to go out in almost every race? You're racing production F1 and F2.
In some ways, it's an advantage in that you keep warm, but other ways it's not, because you get too tired.
But how difficult is it going from a big bike to a little one?
You do notice quite a big difference when you hop on the big bike, because it's so much heavier, and it's a hell of a lot harder to throw it around.
But even the difference in power, you must take different lines. It must be completely different riding one than the other.
Yeah, you have to be pretty careful with the bigger bike, especially, because if you try and get the power on the same place you did on the smaller bike, you're in heaps of trouble.
Glenn Williams talking about the race just a little earlier in the day after the first practice session. He and Paul Pavletic are on the front of the grid. That's number 4 and letter G. Our guest commentator for this race, as they're away in leg 1, is Peter Clifford. Peter, track conditions today other than the wet weather?
Pretty tricky, yes, very difficult indeed. And I think it's quite possible that they've sent them away on another exploratory warm-up lap. Nobody seems in too much of a hurry here, certainly feeling their way. Yeah, they're feeling their way across the, very tricky across the railway lines there, because that sets the bike dipping and weaving across the railway lines, and now splashing up through the puddles you can see into the Essex. Have to cross the white line here. Which some people found particularly slippery in practice. You can see you've got to run across the white lines, which are very slippery.
I gather it is the actual race start. They haven't sent them on another warm-up. It's Peter Robb from Bruce Woodley at the moment. Glenn Williams back in 3rd place.
You can see Woodley putting his foot out there, obviously unsure of the conditions. Yes, they're on their first flying lap.
Peter Robb on the Yamaha 600. Formula 2 is for 4-stroke bikes up to 600cc or 2 strokes up to 250. And you can modify frame. You can make a hybrid of one engine and a custom-made frame if you want, or you can modify a production bike.
And of course, Woodley, who's in 2nd place, has the disadvantage that he's on a 250 Yamaha, which is quite a peaky power band and difficult to control in these positions, opposed to the leader on his 4-stroke Yamaha, which is a lot more useful on a wet track. Having a big slide there. I'd say it was a youthful power, but he got the power on too early and went sideways on number 24.
Bruce Woodley trying to have a go. Really not like motor racing in the wet weather on a street circuit. The number of obstacles there are to hit and the number of white lines on the road make it very, very difficult indeed.
And Woodley again with that foot down and running wide. Trouble is, when you put your foot down, it tends to upset your feeling of balance and may not be really an advantage.
Rather a disappointment for Formula 2. One hopes that the road will dry up as the day goes on. The rain shower that was there at the start of the race has stopped now.
And you can see Glenn Williams in 3rd place, feeling out the conditions. I wonder if he's got a bit in hand that we might see him go better later in the race. But the yellow flag's being waved. There's presumably been an accident at this place. That's why the yellow flag should be being waved. Yes, somebody's gone into the hay bales.
I think it'd be rather surprising if somebody hadn't come off in that size field in conditions like this. Very treacherous potentially.
But the road now clear. And Williams still unable to make any ground on these two.
Peter Robb still hanging on to that lead, in fact extending it just slightly. There's Paul Pavletic, number 4, and Glenn Williams together.
And a nice move by Pavletic to get inside Williams on breaking into that corner, but Williams coming back at him.
This is 3rd and 4th places. Still Peter Robb, Bruce Woodley.
Now Robb's riding a very nice race here out in front of Woodley, using the flexibility of the modified production bike, and they're closing on tail enders, and this will be very tricky because in the unpredictability of tail enders changing their lines, you can choose to go one side, and then if you have to dab the brakes, it can be very nasty. But Rob and Woodley passed before they get to the tricky section over the railway lines. And just looking at the riders' screens, they don't seem to be having too much trouble with misting up. You can often pick the white patches on their visors if they're misting up, but neither of the two leaders seem to be having that problem.
Enough ventilation under the visors and the helmets.
Often if you start breathing very, very hard, it can start the visor misting up. But as we watch Glenn Williams, we can see that Pavletic is closing up on the two leaders. That's number 24, the leader, Woodley in second place, and Pavletic 4 has got past Williams and is closing up on the two front men.
The Yamaha 600, holding the lead, which he had right from the first corner. And Woodley trying to make an impression on him, but not really getting close enough to do anything about it, and being pulled in now by poor Pavletic.
Yes, and Pavletic has the same disadvantage that that Woodley has in riding a racing bike as opposed to a modified production bike, which number 24 is. These bikes are a lot more peaky than the four-strokes, and you can see Woodley and Pavletic having trouble with the traffic now.
Pavletic definitely pulling in Woodley in third place. Looking for second.
Pavletic no time to lose because he knows that Rob is ahead. And if he's going to catch him, he's got to get past Woodley quickly. There's very few places that it's easy to pass here at Wanganui. He may be able to get a run on past him down the start and finish straight and outbreak him into the next right-hander. So he's got to get through this corner well and accelerate. Oh, tries to accelerate hard, but the back end slides away wildly. So that rather spoiled his overtaking. He's looking for a way down the inside.
Still Peter Robb holding on to this lead. In fact, getting some advantage from the fact that Woodley and Pavletic seem to be having their own race. Glenn Williams has dropped off them just a little. There's Glenn Williams into the picture there in the green leathers. He's dropped off that group just a little now.
But Pavletic now has second place. A brave manoeuvre passing Woodley, crossing the railway lines. And he now goes up into second place. And there's G. Williams in fourth, as these two are the second and third, number 4 and number W.
And look how quickly that track dries out. Most of the surface water gone on most parts of the track. And
you can see from the fact that Pavletic's pulling a wheelie that there still is traction because these tyres work so well. Now, Glenn Williams will be on production tyres, and that's a disadvantage because they are all-weather tyres and are not purpose-built rain tyres, which number 4 and number W will be using. So that's why they've been able to pull away from him.
But Pavletic still with a job ahead of him to catch Peter Robb, number 24, the race leader.
But he seems to be doing it as Rob having trouble with number 33, a tail ender. And now Pavletic has the problem of finding the tail ender right in the middle of the corner, just when he didn't want to.
Here's Rob through, here's Pavletic. Definitely catching. One wonders if he hasn't left a little late in the race. He's really got to take a bit of a risk in the wet to get up there to that production bike.
And a difficult ride for Rob because he's been out on his own for some while now, not knowing really how hard to push it, trying to take it easy, not wishing to push things too hard in the very tricky conditions. And now he must have seen that Pavletic is right on his tail.
Poor Pavletic again proving that there is traction there, pulling a wheelie.
And again, Pavletic will try and get the drive over the bridge. He already had one slide when he tried to pass Woodley and had another slide in the same place.
Now this is where we'll see how cool Peter Robb is under pressure, because if anybody applies pressure from behind, it's poor Pavletic, regardless of the fact that he's losing the tail of it about 3 times a circuit.
And you can see Pavletic taking some rather strange lines there. He didn't want to run across that white line under power because he felt the back end would slide, and he's using a lot of the middle of the road.
Had a little look that time up the inside, but Rob threw ahead of him.
Now I wonder if you see Pavletic trying on the brakes into the flower garden after these 2 corners. Yes, he's looking for a way up the inside. Yes, he found it. Pavletic takes over the lead. A brilliant manoeuvre. Now, of course, he's got to try and get away from the four-stroke Yamaha. Woodley's in a good third place.
That's really a classic example of a rider being able to cope with the conditions and not losing heart at the fact that he was losing traction.
And you can see him get the bike almost upright before he applies the power. He seems to have the traction on an upright position, but has had several nasty slides while accelerating leaned over. And that was Woodley in third place, and a good third place, now challenging Rob a little bit.
Woodley's obviously getting to grips with the circuit and its conditions. Getting close enough to Rob, but Pavletic in the lead.
But there's still a lot of tail enders out there, and Pavletic can't afford to relax, because if he's a little slow passing a tail ender, Rob will be right back on his tail.
See Woodley starting to lean the bike a little more now, trying just a little bit harder, having a go at Rob. See as they come through the Pavletic. Quite happy to pull the wheelies when he's in an upright position.
And Woodley looking for the outside line, very nicely past Rob there up into second. So it's Pavletic with now Woodley with a second burst of speed in a good second place, now pulling away from Rob. And Woodley W still with that foot down style. The race isn't over yet, although they're getting the white flag. There's so many tail enders out that Woodley could still catch Pavletic, number 4, the leader. W in second place, number 4 who leads. Fighting his way through the tail enders. There's still everything could happen on this last lap.
There's Paul Pavletic, the race leader, making his way through some back markers on the last lap now.
And he's got a nice buffer between him and W. Woodley in second place.
There's no way Bruce Woodley's going to get round there that quickly. But Paul Pavletic can hold it upright. Without the mistakes, he'll come round after the right-hander ahead of him to the checkered flag to win the first Formula 2 heat of the day.
He checks that there's nobody close behind him, but he's already had 1 or 2 big slides in this last corner, and he won't be eager to repeat them.
Well, he has a 3-point lead already over Glenn Williams. He's just about to extend it. Look over his shoulder and almost losing it. That's one of the little incidents that could have cost him the race when he had it in his hand. Paul Pavletic first, Bruce Woodley second, Peter Robb third. And Glenn Williams coming through now on the production bike tyres. He did really well to stay that close.
But of course the advantage now that Glenn Williams will go out in the other races with full course knowledge. Everybody else has practiced in the dry
on this street circuit as we wait for the start of the first Formula 1 race of the day. And those who have just